Excuse me, how much longer until I'm called? We called you just now.
What?
Startled by the receptionist's words, I hurried into the examination room, and there was my familiar husband.
Why are you here?
The blood drained from John's face. In his panic, he tried to kick me out of the room. Immediately after, an unbelievable scene came into my view. My name is Christy Thomas, 27 years old. I was raised as the older of two sisters. I work in corporate office management. 3 years ago, I got married and now live with my husband John. We met in college, worked at the same part-time job, dated for 4 years, and got married. Even now, we maintain a relationship where we can talk about anything, just like friends. By the way, I'm currently 7 weeks pregnant. We wanted a child right after we got married, but it didn't happen easily, and after 2 years of fertility treatment, a new life is finally growing inside me. When I went to the OB GYN alone, the gestational sac, which is the baby's growing room, was already visible, and the ultrasound photo even showed the tiny fetus. I haven't told John about the pregnancy yet. I wanted to surprise him. On the way back from the OB/GYN, I bought a cake and stopped at a supermarket to get ingredients for his favorite food. When I got home, I started cooking right away. A few hours later, John, who came home saying I'm home, widened his eyes when he saw the food on the table.
Wow! It's so luxurious today. There's even my favorite beef stew.
Hee hee, that's right. I thought we should have a party today.
Huh? A party? Why all of a sudden?
Actually, I went to the hospital today.
Hospital?
I handed the ultrasound photo I took out of my bag to John, who was looking anxious. Looking at it, he raised his face forcefully and stared at me.
Christy, is this really? John, we're becoming parents. Ray, really?
We're going to be parents.
Yes, it's true. Our baby has finally come to us.
I'm just so surprised, I'm lost for words.
I know, it doesn't feel real, does it? But it's true. Our baby is really growing inside me, growing steadily. Oh my God. Everything seems to be growing fine. Together, John, we're finally becoming parents.
With every word I say, the reality of it slowly sinks in. Tears start flowing from my eyes, and before I know it, I can't stop them. John must be really happy, too. He hugs me tight, his eyes also brimming with tears. Over and over again, he says thank you with a grateful smile on his face. Ever since that day, John has been taking on even more of the household chores than before. We used to share the housework, but now he's taken over cleaning the bathroom because it's too dangerous for me. He's also been proactive about grocery shopping for heavy items like rice and water. But that's not all. In order to reduce my burden even a little bit, he started making appointments for my prenatal checkups on his own. He's been asking about my schedule and making my checkup appointments for me, since I'm not so good with using the internet. I've been experiencing mild morning sickness, but not enough to keep me bedridden, so I've continued to work as usual. When I get home, I make dinner and wait for John to come back. He's been working overtime a lot since about a year ago, and usually doesn't get home until after 9 p.m. This night, though, he didn't come home even when it was past 10 p.m. Whenever it gets past 9 p.m., he always calls, but tonight there's no word from him. I try reaching out to him, but there's no response, so I wait for him anxiously. Then, just past 11 p.m., I hear the sound of the front door opening. I rushed over to greet him. "John, welcome home. I was worried because you didn't contact me." Sorry. Something came up. But you weren't supposed to have overtime today, right? Did something happen? No. Just got some unexpected work. His eyes are clearly avoiding mine. Something seems off about how he's speaking. An uneasy premonition gripped me, and I confronted him right away. John, are you hiding something?
What? What are you talking about? I'm not hiding anything.
Then why won't you look me in the eye? If you have nothing to hide, you should be able to tell me where you were and what you were doing, right?
I told you. I got caught up with an unexpected job. Some screw up by a junior. I had to step in and handle it.
But even if that was the case, couldn't you have sent me a message like you usually do? I texted you several times. I even called you, didn't I?
Well, it couldn't be helped. I was busy. I didn't have time to answer your calls.
John, who was usually so composed, raised his voice and glared at me. This was the first time I had ever seen him like this, and it startled me. He continued ranting, panting, and out of breath.
After all I do, working late and then coming home to be doubted. What nerve! Is it fun for you, making a fool out of people like this?
What are you talking about?
I'm not making a fool out of you. I'm just asking why you were late. I said it was because of overtime, didn't I? What more do you want?
It's not about what I want or don't want. You didn't contact me like you usually do. That's why I thought it was strange.
Oh, enough! You're being so stubborn. Is it because you're pregnant that you're having these intense delusions?
What?
Listen, Christy. When the time comes for you to give birth, you won't be able to work. And then who do you think is going to support us? Me, right? If you want to be supported, stop interfering in my work.
John then left, throwing off his suit and going straight into the bath, after which he shut himself in our bedroom. What was left in the living room was the untouched dinner I had prepared. In front of the untouched side dishes, I was overwhelmed by indescribable emotions. Why? Why would he say things like that? All I did was point out that something felt off. To call it delusions? That's too harsh. Since that day, John began treating me coldly. It became normal for him to come home in the early hours of the morning, and the days when he would come home by 9 p.m., as he used to, became rare. In the midst of all this uncertainty, my pregnancy continued. John, who used to help out with anything and everything, no longer did any household chores, leaving it all to me. The strain of doing the housework while being careful not to exert too much force on my stomach gradually wore me down. Finally, unable to handle everything alone, I called my younger sister, Karen. Hey, Karen?
Oh, sis, long time no see. What's up?
Well, I had a bit of a spat with John. Oh, really? You two are just like the saying, the more you argue, the better you get along, huh? Karen, my sister who's 3 years younger than me, is working in the fashion industry. We've always been referred to as two peas in a pod, and we're very close. During my dating days with John, she was my go-to for advice. She's an irreplaceable part of my life. That day, too, she listened to me for almost an hour before I ended the call. Opening up to her helped me feel a bit better. I was in the 17th week of my pregnancy, and my belly was starting to show. Entering the stable period, I felt fine, so I headed to work as usual. After my lunch break, just as I was about to start my afternoon tasks, something happened. I felt a sudden, unfamiliar twinge in my belly. What was that? The pain seemed to linger. In that moment, I thought about the safety of my child. Feeling anxious, I left work early and rushed to the women's clinic I usually visit. Normally, John would make an appointment for me, but today was unexpected and I didn't have one. It looked like I'd have to wait a while for a checkup, but the thought of going home like this filled me with anxiety. Ready for a long wait, I explained the situation to the reception staff. "Excuse me. I'm Christy Thomas, and I've been having some mild abdominal pain for a while." "Thomas, please wait a moment. I didn't have an appointment because it was unexpected today." "Oh, here you are."
Huh?
"You're Christy Thomas, right? 17 weeks pregnant? We have an appointment for you. Please wait over there."
Okay."
As instructed, I took a seat on the waiting room sofa. I took out my planner from my bag to check, but there was no appointment scheduled for today. Since that incident, things have been awkward between John and me, but he's still been making my medical appointments as usual. That said, my next appointment isn't until later. It's definitely not today. Feeling somewhat uneasy, I decided to just wait until they called me. About an hour passed when I was hit by the stomachache again. I stood up and headed to the restroom. And yet, my turn still hadn't come. Even for a busy clinic, I should have been called by now. Could it be that I didn't really have an appointment? I went back to the reception desk and asked a different staff member. "Excuse me, do you know how much longer it will be until I'm called? May I have your name, please?" "It's Thomas. Christy Thomas. I've been waiting for over an hour." "Thomas. Oh, is there a problem?" "Well, you were called just now."
What?
"You should have been called into consultation room number 3. I thanked the staff and quickly headed to the consultation room. A sign on the door of room number 3 read, "In consultation." In consultation. I was supposed to be called, so why? Could someone else have mistakenly entered? In a split second, I knocked on the door of consultation room number 3. A nurse opened the door and asked, "Can I help you?" I'm Christy Thomas. I had to use the restroom earlier and..."
Christy Thomas?
The receptionist said I was already called, but the sign said "in consultation," so I thought maybe someone else had gone in. "Wait, you're Christy Thomas?" "But she is already inside."
What?
No matter how I thought about it, something was off. Convinced of this, I pushed past the nurse and forced my way into the examination room. That's when it happened. An unbelievable sight met my eyes.
Why are you here?
There, in the room, was none other than my husband, John. The moment he saw me, he started speaking in a flustered manner.
Christy, what are you doing here? That's what I was going to ask. Why are you here?
Could it be, John, did you make the appointment under my name? But why?
Just get out for now.
John tried to forcefully push me out of the room. However, given this obviously strange situation, I couldn't just back down.
John, explain this to me. Why are you here right now? I'll explain later. So for now, I want an explanation now. You can't expect me to just accept this, can you? I'm begging you. Just leave for now.
While I was arguing with John, the doctor, probably returning from an internal exam, came back, looking puzzled.
Wait, Christy. Huh?
Seeing me, the doctor's eyes widened. Doctor, I just got here.
Huh? Then who did I just examine?
Just as he said that, the door to the exam room opened. Coming out of the room was none other than my sister, Karen.
Oh, Karen.
I had absolutely no idea what was going on anymore.
Why is Karen here?
My frustration grew at Karen's hesitations. I confronted her.
Why is the appointment under my name? And why did you come out of the examination room?
Then, the doctor who had been listening opened his mouth. Mrs. Thomas, I apologize for not realizing it was not you. She was wearing a mask, so I couldn't tell. But I thought it was strange. You're supposed to be 17 weeks pregnant, but the baby was too small. It was no wonder the doctor didn't realize. My sister and I look so much alike, and she was wearing a mask. Doctor, the person you just examined is my sister. And that man there is my husband.
What? So you mean the father of the baby I just examined is?
The doctor's sharp gaze locked onto John. I could see the color draining from his face. And at that moment, I finally understood everything. John, Karen. I need an explanation from the beginning. Whether they had given up or not, they slowly started to speak. According to them, they had been in a relationship for about a year. While I was struggling to get pregnant and undergoing fertility treatments, they claimed temptation got the better of them. Then, my pregnancy was confirmed. At first, they were purely happy, but shortly after, Karen's pregnancy was also confirmed. Karen asked John to accompany her to the hospital because she was scared, and John, in his usual carelessness, mistakenly booked the appointment under my account. He noticed this just before we arrived at the hospital, panicked, pretended to forget the insurance card, and completed the check-in. While I was in the restroom, the staff at the front desk's shift changed. As soon as they called the name for the appointment, Karen must have slipped into the examination room without running into me. The doctor initially didn't realize it was Karen since she was wearing a mask. But of course, during the examination, it became clear she wasn't me. And as the doctor was wondering about this, the real Christy arrived at the examination room. After that, I regained my composure and had my own checkup. The abdominal pain was diagnosed as transient and there was no problem with my baby. I took my husband and sister and headed straight for our parents' house. I also contacted John's parents and asked them to come to the house. Once everyone was gathered, I explained to them the whole situation. Of course, you're going to take responsibility, right? I asked. Stammering, my husband responded.
Responsibility. Of course. I will continue to be with you, Christy.
Huh? What are you talking about? We're obviously getting a divorce.
Eh? But you just mentioned responsibility.
The responsibility I'm talking about is alimony. I'm going to make sure you pay, both you and Karen, for what you've done.
What? Wait a minute. I never intended to get a divorce.
My husband's words sparked anger in my sister who was standing nearby.
What? You said you loved me more. Was that all a lie?
Karen grabbed my husband's collar, and they started to argue. Their noisy squabble pushed my anger to its peak. I splashed the tea from the table on both of them, raising my voice as much as possible.
Enough is enough. I don't care about your opinions. I'm divorcing John and I'm cutting ties with Karen. You two just need to pay the alimony quietly. Wait, Christy. The one I love is you. Sis. I'm your sister, aren't I? Don't talk about alimony. Shut up. Both of you only say things that suit your purposes. How far do you plan to ridicule me? I will collect the alimony by any means necessary. If it means sending you two to hell, I'll do whatever it takes. If you get it, Get out of my sight, you scumbags!
At that, both of them began to prostrate themselves in front of me.
Please forgive me, Christy. I beg you. Sis, I also beg you.
It's too late for their repentance. What they did is unforgivable, and I have absolutely no intention of forgiving them. After that, my husband and I divorced, as expected. I blocked Karen's contact information and cut off all ties with them completely. They were disowned by their families and had to start living on their own. But John's affair was spread to his workplace through his parents, and because of that, he started receiving cold stares from his colleagues. Unable to bear the atmosphere, he continued to be absent from work without notice and was eventually fired. Karen, on the other hand, was suffering from severe morning sickness and had already quit her job. Now jobless, whenever they faced each other, they cursed at each other and led a miserable life. They began living together, but they hadn't gotten married. I think they won't support each other as a married couple in the future. As for me, I moved back to my parents' house and am now leading a pregnant life. I switched my job to remote work and am anxiously waiting for the birth of my child. I might make my child suffer because there's no father. Even so, I intend to love this child with all my heart in my own way.
So, we're thinking of moving everyone over here once the third one's born,
Sissy said in her straightforward manner.
With the kids growing up, our current apartment is just too cramped. You want the kids to be able to run around freely, right? It's impossible to just move out of the blue. All the rooms are taken.
Then, Tim and his family can leave. Tim doesn't have kids, so it should be fine, right? Just move out now. As Tim and I were baffled by her words, a scream from Tim's wife, Emily, filled the air. Sissy's eldest child, Isaac, had shot Emily with a water gun. I hurriedly took the water gun away from Isaac.
Why would you do something like this?
This lady is a bad person. That's why God is angry and made her unable to have children. Isaac didn't understand why he was being scolded and looked like he was about to cry.
What have you been telling your child? It's not true. Emily just can't love children. If she really wanted kids, she wouldn't need fertility treatments to conceive, right? I'm living proof. I love my children, so God has blessed me with them. Meanwhile, Emily has been undergoing fertility treatments for years and still doesn't have any children. Enough.
Emily stopped Tim's clenched fist, saying, "It's okay. All right. If Sissy insists that much, I'll leave this house."
If you had just agreed from the start. You're nothing but a burden eating away at this house's wealth.
After having her say, Sissy left with a satisfied look on her face. My name is Roseanne. I'm a housewife who turned 50 this year. Currently, I live in a two-family home with my husband, Christopher, and my son and his wife, making 4 of us. Tim has always been serious. After graduating from college, he got a job at a major trading company and married Emily, a colleague, when he was 23. Emily was 4 years older than Tim, so my husband and I were a bit surprised when we first heard about their marriage. But Emily was kind-hearted and good at cooking, so I was confident we could trust Tim with her.
Tim and I will build a warm family together. I was an only child, so I'd like to have many children if possible. A lively family has always been my dream,
Emily said, her eyes shining with hope for the future. However, they struggled to have children. As she approached 30, she became anxious and started fertility treatments with Tim's consultation.
Despite not achieving their hoped-for results, Emily never forgot to smile, saying, "The weather is nice today, why don't we all do a barbecue?" and actively tried to build a relationship with us.
Moved by her attitude, I felt a desire to protect Emily like my own daughter and encouraged her, "Don't rush your feelings. As long as you keep smiling like that, God will reward you someday." Speaking of kids, I've got another daughter. Tim's got 8 years on her. She was our long-awaited girl, born when I was 30. Her name's Sissy. Since Tim, it had been a while since we had a kid, so maybe that's why my husband and I spoiled her rotten.
When Sissy and I went shopping, she'd point at toys on the shelves, saying, "Mom, I want that one. Buy it for me," with those adorable eyes, and I couldn't bring myself to say no, so I ended up buying them more often than not.
As a result, Sissy grew up to be quite the little tyrant. After Tim got a job and became a working adult, he said, "Maybe it's time we teach Sissy about the harsh realities of the world, like common sense," with a serious look on his face, and I had to admit, "You're right. What you're saying makes sense." Reflecting on our parenting up until that point, I felt remorse. As Sissy became a high schooler, she started showing more rebellious attitudes towards us and started coming home late.
"Do you have any idea what time it is?" ! I was worried sick.
"I didn't ask you to worry about me," she'd retort, sighing as she took off her shoes, mumbling, "Ugh, I hate that teacher," seemingly making enemies of all the adults around her who tried to admonish her. "This is all our fault as parents," I'd fret, watching my daughter's sullen face. Then one day, Sissy, who had been playing games in her room, suddenly rushed out and ran into the bathroom. I thought she might be feeling sick, but I quickly realized that wasn't it.
"Could it be that you're? What's it to you? It's none of your business."
That was the first time I realized my daughter was pregnant. "You're still underage. You need to think more seriously about your life," Tim lectured Sissy, but it was too late since there was already a baby on the way. And as soon as Sissy graduated high school, she ran off with Sullivan, a young favorite from a nightclub, as if eloping.
"That girl, she's only 18. Can she really manage carrying a child into the future?"
When I voiced my worries, my husband Christopher, though worried about Sissy at heart, said, "Let her be. She's nothing but trouble," trying to sound indifferent. My fears were confirmed when Sissy, after having her first child, would come home saying, "Mom, I'm really struggling this month. Can you lend me $1,000? Asking for money. Sissy's husband, Sullivan, used to be the top earner at the club, but once the regulars heard he was married with a kid, his popularity cooled off, and his sales plummeted. All these women, not even my girlfriends, complaining all the time. Got me fired, thanks to them. What a nuisance," he said, seemingly unbothered by his unemployment, laughing it off as if it were a joke. "Sullivan, what kind of work are you doing now?" Even when Christopher, acting as Sissy's dad, pressed him, Sullivan just laughed. "I'm looking for all sorts of jobs, but can't seem to find one that suits my charm." Maybe it's the environment? Care and food service aren't really for me. Don't blame the environment. You're a dad now. How do you plan to support your family? It's not the time to be picky about jobs. I couldn't help but get irritated by Sullivan's lackadaisical attitude and all talk, no action stance.
When Tim chimed in, Sissy, already pregnant with their second child, snapped back, "That's lame, Tim. Being a boring salaryman like Tim is just too dull, right? Sullivan has dreams, unlike Tim, so don't make him do any boring job anyone can do." "What's so boring about it? I'm just doing my best with what I can. It's with the salary I earn that we can support our family. Don't mock those who work hard for a living."
Sissy mocking Tim, the salaryman, wasn't new. When Tim landed his job, Sissy, just starting middle school, said, being a salaryman is so lame. Can't even brag about it to friends, genuinely sighing in dismay. So, what job would you have preferred? A musician, an idol, an influencer. Oh, but with Tim, none of those are an option. Average looking and hopeless in life, Tim. Sissy made a comment that implied Tim was worthless. Years passed, but Sissy's mentality remained childlike. It seems we significantly misjudged how to raise our daughter. In front of a pregnant Sissy, Tim, shaking with anger, could only suppress his fury by hitting his own thigh. After Sissy had her energetic second child, she started mocking not only Tim but also his wife, Emily.
Did you start fertility treatments? Because I got pregnant with my second, did that make you panic? It's so funny. Aren't you over 30 now? Isn't it too late for you? Hey, Sissy. There are things that are okay to say and things that are not. That was way too harsh on Emily. Apologize to her.
Despite Tim's outrage, Sissy, without any remorse, flaunted her second child to Emily, saying, "Look, the sad aunt who can't have kids."
As the child started crying, Sissy mockingly comforted it. There, the aunt scared you, didn't she? While Emily, trying to hold back tears, looked away. When Emily, feeling unbearable, stood up to leave the room, Sissy stopped her. Emily, how much have you actually spent on fertility treatments? If you have that much money, wouldn't it be better spent on my children? It's such a bother, women who can't have children. Stop it, Sissy. Emily, you don't have to listen to her. Tim intervened.
It's because Tim always coddles you that you haven't been able to have children. You better hurry up before you get too old. Emily cried quietly in another room, but I felt that any words from me would only pressure her more, so I couldn't bring myself to say anything.
Listening to children's laughter should cheer you up, right, Mom? If only Emily could give you grandchildren, you wouldn't have anything to worry about. What a useless wife you got.
Saying so, Sissy attempted to make me hold her baby right in front of Emily, who was watching.
Then next month, I'll be counting on you for money again, Mom,
she said, as if it was the most natural thing, taking with her an envelope containing $1,000. A year later, Emily's smile had gradually disappeared. I invited her to meals numerous times, hoping to see her bright smile again, but every time we saw a family with children at the restaurant, she sighed. Each time, I felt sorry, regretting that my good intentions had backfired. One day, Sissy visited us as usual.
I have some really happy news for everyone today.
What is it? Did Sullivan finally find a job? I asked, hoping slightly.
No, it's not about that, Sissy said with a beaming smile, making a big deal out of it. In fact, I'm pregnant with a third child. Mom, you're going to have a third grandchild soon. Isn't that great, Mom? Having a daughter who's given you 3 energetic grandchildren.
Sissy laughed triumphantly, glancing at Emily, who looked down.
But before that, I've asked numerous times, has Sullivan found a job? Oh, come on. That doesn't matter right now. Praise me more for being pregnant with the third child. You're happy about it too, right, Mom?
Worried about Emily's feelings, I couldn't genuinely rejoice over Sissy's pregnancy.
Lost for words, I remained silent, and Christopher took over. How can you say earning a living doesn't matter? How are you going to live, having 3 children without working? This is unfair to the children being born.
Christopher, of course, wasn't blaming the addition of another grandchild. The problem was that the father of the upcoming child had no intention of working. Whenever Sullivan visited with Sissy and the topic of work came up, he'd hastily excuse himself, saying, "I'm going out to buy cigarettes," and escape. Seeing this, my spouse and I would exchange looks and sigh, realizing he was still unemployed.
"So, we're thinking of moving here once the third child is born."
Sissy spoke in such a casual tone that I almost missed it. Wait a minute. Move in here?
Of course, where else would we move? This house is like my parental home, so there's no problem if we move in, right?
Indeed, our family moved into this house when Tim and his wife got married, living together as a two-family household. But this wasn't the home where Sissy was born.
Besides, with 3 kids growing up, our current apartment will be too cramped. Kids need to run around and have fun, right? What do you think? It's impossible just to spring that on us. No matter how big the house is, all the rooms are occupied by the 4 of us living here, including Tim and his wife. There's no room for you to move in.
It may sound cold, but it's the reality.
I thought this would make Sissy give up and leave, but she glared at Emily menacingly and said, "Then, Tim and his family should just move out. Tim has a stable job and a salary, right? That should be enough for him. And since Tim doesn't have children, it's perfect, isn't it? There's no reason for him to cling to this house, so he and Emily should leave right now." As we were bewildered by Sissy's unreasonable demand, "Stop it. That's cold, stop."
Suddenly, Emily's scream echoed. Sissy's eldest child, Isaac, had squirted water at Emily with a water gun. I hurriedly took the water gun from Isaac's hand.
"Why would you do such a thing? You must apologize if you've done something wrong."
"But Mom said this auntie is a bad person. That's why God is angry and made her unable to have children." Isaac genuinely believed it and couldn't understand why he was being scolded, his face on the verge of tears.
I glared at Sissy, Isaac's mother, and said, "What have you been telling your child?" "Well, it's the truth. Emily probably can't love children. If you really wish for children, you don't need to spend a lot of money on fertility treatments. Children are naturally conceived, right? I'm the proof. I love my children. That's why God is watching over me and blessed me with children. Unlike Emily, who's been wasting money on fertility treatments for years without any results. Do you see any children around her? Enough already. Teaching your child baseless, unscientific things and letting him harass others is wrong, even for a mother." Tim finally raised his voice, but far from being remorseful, Sissy retorted with a sneer, "It doesn't hurt or itch me what a childless Tim says. And maybe the reason Emily can't have children is partly due to Tim?"
Emily, with her fists clenched, desperately stopped Tim. "It's okay. If Sissy insists so much, I'll leave this house."
Contrary to the tearfully biting her lip Emily, Sissy smirked triumphantly. "If you had been honest from the start, it would have been better. You're just a nuisance, eating away at the house's wealth," and left with a satisfied look after throwing insults at Emily until the very end.
The house went quiet once Sissy and her family left. "So, we've decided to leave. Thank you for everything," Tim said, bidding us goodbye. "We need to decide where to live and prepare." As Tim and Emily got up to go to their room, I stopped them. "Wait. We're coming with you."
"What?"
"I can't forgive Sissy's terrible behavior either. So, we're also leaving this house." Looking at Christopher sitting next to me, he nodded firmly. "I'm of the same mind." A month passed. Opening the bedroom curtains, I could see a vast vegetable garden through the window. Opening the window to let in the fresh air, I felt wrapped in a mysteriously gentle sensation, as if both my body and soul were being soothed. While not all the fields in view were ours, a local farmer had lent us a section for our family. Almost every day, someone from the neighborhood would leave vegetables they'd grown at our doorstep without a word.
"Roseanne, look! We got such a big cabbage!"
Emily exclaimed, her eyes shining like an innocent girl. Emily, who had been devastatingly upset the night Sissy demanded they leave, seemed to have regained some peace over the past month. Sometimes, watching the neighborhood children run around, Emily would smile wistfully, and I felt a tightness in my chest, knowing nothing I could say would help right now. "There's a festival in the neighborhood next month. I'll try to help out with the preparations if I have time. Where's Dad?"
Christopher went to greet the chairman of the pest control group. "There are a lot of boars around here, so Christopher wants to contribute to the local community."
Our lives have completely changed since moving here, surrounded by rich nature, feeling refreshed in both body and soul compared to before. Tim, now allowed to work remotely, has set up a home office and is dedicated to his work. Though moving from the city to an unfamiliar countryside life has its inconveniences, being freed from the daily commute, Tim smiles peacefully. "This place is heaven." My mobile phone rang, and when I looked at the screen, it was Sissy's name. "Oh, it's been a month. How are you feeling?"
I asked as a mother concerned about her pregnant daughter's health, but on the other end of the line, Sissy was far from calm, yelling, "What's going on?" When I went to pack up and visit the family home today, there was a vacant sign in front of the house. "You know something, right? Explain this to me." "It's exactly as you saw. The house is currently vacant." "If the sign is still there, it means no one has moved in yet, doesn't it?" "Why?" "Knowing we were going to move, is this some kind of harassment?"
"It's not harassment. You were the one who told Emily to leave that house."
"I did say that, but that doesn't mean you all had to leave too, right?" "Where are you now?" "Where am I?" "I'm at my own home, of course." "So, your own home isn't this house where I am now?" "What's going on?"
I decided to briefly explain the situation up to this point. A month after Sissy made the unreasonable demand for Emily to leave the house, I moved to a new home with Tim and his wife. The home was previously occupied by elderly relatives who are now in a facility, allowing us to rent it. When we were looking for a new place to live and asked around, Christopher's cousin mentioned a vacant house.
"I just wanted Tim and his family to leave." "But why did you all have to leave as well? Do you dislike me that much? Is that woman who can't have children so important?"
We couldn't forgive your words. There was silence on the other end of the call.
"You mocked Emily, who is trying hard with fertility treatments, but you too were born thanks to fertility treatment." "What?"
"I got married at 20 and had Tim at 22. Despite the fear surrounding my first childbirth, fortunately, Tim was born without any issues and grew up healthy. When Tim started kindergarten and I began to feel a bit more relaxed about parenting, I started thinking about having a second child. The trigger was Tim seeing a friend's younger sister and saying, 'I want a brother or sister too.' Christopher and I thought it would be nice to have another child since two would make things more lively, and at 27, I thought I still had plenty of time to have and raise another child. However, despite our efforts, getting pregnant again didn't happen as quickly as we hoped, and we started to feel a bit anxious, so we consulted with an obstetrician who suggested fertility treatments. We followed the doctor's advice and adjusted our lifestyle, but despite our efforts, there were no signs of pregnancy, and I began to feel desperate as I approached 30. When I visited the clinic for a checkup, I saw a woman with a swollen belly, a young boy cuddling up to her, talking to the baby about to be born. While I found it heartwarming, I couldn't help but think, why not me, as my thoughts inevitably drifted to a darker place. Christopher tried to reassure me, don't worry so much.
But if we keep waiting, it'll only get harder to have children.
Christopher never snapped back at me. Instead, he would smile quietly and hug me gently. On my 30th birthday, feeling something was off, I rushed to the bathroom and found a positive result on a pregnancy test, leading us to the hospital.
Congratulations, you're pregnant.
That year, we were blessed with you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to finally meet you, Sissy.
Sissy, I'm your big brother. Let's get along. I was truly happy when you were born. Not just me, but Christopher and Tim, we all celebrated your arrival. Yet, you said such terrible things to Emily, who's struggling with fertility treatments. I just couldn't forgive you. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know I was born through fertility treatments. I'll change and reflect. Please forgive me. Can we come back? That's impossible. We've already left that house, and it wasn't ours to begin with.
What do you mean it wasn't ours?
That house was rented to us at a low cost by Emily's dad for our sake. You might not have known, but we paid rent every month.
I wasn't told about this. What are we going to do now? We've already given up our apartment. We have nowhere to live. There's a place right in front of you. It's vacant, so that's fortunate for you, Sissy. All right, I'll live in this house. But a month later, the rent is too high. Isn't there something wrong with this house?
Is that so? We had a special deal because of Emily, but the actual rent is usually high. It has a large backyard suitable for barbecues, you know?
Don't talk like it's someone else's problem. You know, right, Mom? Sullivan has no income. How can we afford such high rent, not even for a month?
That's your problem, isn't it? I can't do anything about it. Can't you lend me just the money for the rent? You do think of me as your dear daughter, right? It's impossible. Do you have any idea how much money we've lent you already? Because of you, we've lost our savings for retirement. Even if we had the money, we wouldn't lend it to you. Somehow, Sissy found out where Emily was receiving her medical treatments and ambushed her at the clinic. You figured out this place pretty well, didn't you?
It was easy to find out. In a place like this, there's only one clinic. But Emily, please, I'm begging you. Ask your dad to reduce our rent.
There's no need for that. This person is a stranger to us now. I won't ask my dad either. We refuse your request, Sissy. Then you'll at least take care of the kids, right? They are your dear grandchildren. It's going to be tough with the new baby coming, and it would really help if you could look after them. No matter what you say, I have no intention of helping you anymore. Let's go, Emily. Later, I heard rumors about Sullivan not even trying to find a job and their two restless children, crying and scattering food around. Surrounded by her family, Sissy gave birth to her third child. A few months later, frustrated, Emily's dad evicted the Sissy family for not paying rent.
Curious about how they were settling into their new public housing, I sometimes went to check on them. I'm tired from job hunting. Sullivan would shout. You're just playing around with no money.
Sissy retorted as neighbors stepped outside, sighing at yet another scene. Returning home, the smell of stew from the kitchen whet my appetite.
Emily, noticing my return, ran over. You seem to be glowing today, Emily. Did something good happen?
Actually, I'll announce it at dinner." When dinner time came, Christopher and Tim gathered in the dining room. Seeing Emily smiling more brightly than usual made everyone else naturally start smiling too.
"I have something to tell you. I'm finally pregnant. Congratulations, Emily."
Christopher, silent, covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking.
"Come on, you're going to be a dad. And you, Mom, your face is all tear-streaked."
What a wonderful night it was. Imagining our life as a family of 5, I couldn't stop my tears and smiles.